All right, let's rock and roll on some Q&A. Who's got a question to begin with? Yes, sir.
I see you really don't.
The question was, he didn't see pork listed in the primary proteins. And I don't really have a problem with a little bit of pork in a meal plan, but I would definitely not recommend that people consume pork like you can consume grass-fed beef. The reason being is because there's just a lot of information about pork being a more unclean type of meat. Pork and pigs just have a higher parasite level in their foods, and a lot of people actually have a lot of bug problems in their guts. They have, yeast overgrowth, and they have candida and things like that. So that's why pork isn't on there as a primary protein. That's why bacon is an accent type of food, is because first and foremost, you have to be extremely particular with where you get your pork. Okay? I wouldn't touch conventional pork with a 10-foot pole. I just wouldn't. And the reason is because I see all the data and all the research coming out of the bacterial overgrowth in these conventional practices. And it's like, listen, as long as you're going to produce a product like that, I'm going to stay away from it. And we recommend other people do as well. But there are some wonderful farmers out there who are doing fresh air pork. Their pigs right now are feasting on acorns and things like that, and they're feeding them extra rations of acorns, and they're out there and they're eating roots and things like that, like they're supposed to do. That's the type of pig you want to look for. So every so often, if I'm out to eat or something, I'll get a pork chop, but I don't buy pork chops and bring them into my house and make them. Does that make sense? So I really just kind of keep my pork intake down to a minimum. And some of you may choose to eat a little bit more pork than that, and that's fine. But we've seen people, when they use pork as more of an accent protein, we've seen that they get health results because of it. So, good question. Yes, ma'am. The question was, is that I made a comment about kind of getting over diabetes, kind of insinuating that diabetes could go away. And the question was, is that possible? Is that right? Okay. Absolutely it is. Type 2 diabetes is one of the easiest things that I've ever dealt with. It's important for people to realize that type 2 diabetes is one of those things, especially in clinic, where you'll run into a lot of different levels of type 2 diabetes, because there's people who've had it for a long time and who have had other health problems complicate it. And that's kind of intense type 2 diabetes. Whereas there's so many people out there right now that are pre-diabetic or they're newly diabetic. And when I say newly diabetic, I mean even in the last 3 to 4 to 5 years, who with a quick change in lifestyle, it's gone. It literally is gone. They'd never have diabetes again. Now, if you return back to that way of living again, you will produce the symptoms of diabetes again. But we all will do that. That's just the body's response to that kind of lifestyle. So it's important to know that there are different levels of type 2, that if diabetes came on along with a bunch of other health problems, it's probably going to be a little bit more complex to get rid of. But I can tell you this, you will experience drastic decrease in your medications just by doing the things that we talked about in this meal plan process here. It'll change completely. But yes, in the vast majority of type 2 diabetics, type 2 can go away completely. They don't ever have to deal with it. The pancreas will be secreting normal levels of insulin. The cells will be seeing that message and will be metabolizing the sugar normally, and everything will be stable. Right, the question was about cooking with oils and different types of oils. How do you know when they're breaking down, or what types of oils to use when you cook? And the bottom line is, I usually will cook with natural animal oils because they're more saturated, and saturated oils are more stable under heat. Okay? So this, when your parents or grandparents used to cook with lard, that was a very good thing to do. Lard is very, very stable. And that's the lard back then. A lot of the lard now is just completely annihilated in processing and things like that. But butter and things like that are very, very good to cook with. Ghee is another thing that's very good to cook with. You will know it's breaking down when it begins to smoke. Most people cook their food way too high because we haven't been taught the right way to cook food. You really never should be cooking food past a medium type of heat. Okay? I talk to people when I cook food, I try not to cook with olive oil. I try not to cook with seed oils very often because they're the ones that'll break down in heat, and they'll begin to create trans fats when you eat them. It'll change the molecule, the fatty acid molecule, and it becomes dangerous to your body. So do not get something to a smoking point. If your butter is browning fast, you are burning the milk solids in the butter. Okay, so just slow the cooking process down. This actually is going to help a lot of you too when it comes to your proteins, because when you switch to an appropriately raised protein, it's going to be leaner naturally. And if you cook it too high, it's going to taste like shoe leather. Whereas a lot of the conventional meat on the market is so full of fat that, I mean, you can cook the living crap out of something and it still tastes good. It's still moist. Well, it's because it's laced with fat and stuff all throughout the steak or whatever. So it's always good when it comes to food prep to bring your heat down, and if you want to cook with an oil, cook with a natural animal oil. You can cook with olive oil, but you got to make sure your temp is medium or lower if you don't want to change it too much. Yep, type of cooking is the same. You can still saute, stovetop, and all of that. Yes, ma'am. Cooking with organic coconut oil is another saturated oil. Thank you for that. Coconut oil is kind of one of the rock stars that has come onto the food scene here lately. Organic raw coconut oil, as a saturated oil, is very stable under heat as well. We use it to pop popcorn and things like that as well. So yes, that's a very good oil as well. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, the question was, if you do not tolerate milk very well, what would be the alternative? Almond milk is wonderful. Cashew milk is wonderful. I do not recommend soy milk because you remember the graphic in the last lesson about how much soy was GMO? Even if you're drinking the milk, you're still getting the foreign proteins in your body, and you're going to have reactions to it. So stay away from soy milk. But when it comes to milk substitutes, almond milk, you can find organic almond milk. When you're finding milk alternatives, by the way, you have to find the stuff that is unsweetened and unflavored. Because Americans like sweet and flavored stuff, they make these alternatives and they put all kinds of junk in these almond milk alternatives. And here you've got this artificial vanilla flavor with added sugar, and you're sitting here you're trying to make a better choice, and you're kind of making a lateral move. So yes, you can use those alternatives. I use nut milk alternatives. We make our own cashew milk at home. That's because we have a Vitamix. And we soak our raw cashews for 12 hours, and then we blend them up, and it makes cashew milk. It's excellent, and that's what we use for our shakes. But use those nut milk alternatives and make sure they don't have a bunch of added stuff. Same principles, just look at the ingredient panel and you'll know if it's good or not. So, yes? So the grapeseed oil is, the question was, is grapeseed oil okay to cook with? I actually am okay with grapeseed oil as well as safflower oil. Both of those seem to hold up fairly well to heat, but again, you just want to keep them down. You'll notice that some of our recipes actually use grapeseed oil in the baking, because grapeseed oil, the body of it, for some reason, it just does a really nice job in baking to substitute where people would normally use like a canola oil or something like that in baking. And it's kind of tasteless, so it doesn't lend a flavor of a seed to your muffins or whatever you're trying to make. So yes, grapeseed is good. The question, the comment was about chemical sweeteners or artificial sweeteners such as Splenda showing up in the water supply. And actually, there's been a lot of research coming out lately talking about the compromised, how compromised the water supply is, how many pharmacological agents are actually in the water supply. This is why they tell you don't dump your drugs down the sink. That should be a red flag, by the way. Is it not, like, common sense? Okay, it's toxic. Don't put it down the sink because you're going to make the drinking water toxic, because we can't filter that stuff out. It literally it's so bad that it doesn't even break down over time in drinking water, in lake water. So yeah, they're testing and they're finding antipsychotic drugs in the Great Lakes now. We've got diabetes drugs in the Great Lakes, statin drugs in the Great Lakes. I mean, it's wonderful. This is why when someone asked me about water the other day, I tell them I eat fruit and vegetables to get my water. I do not drink a lot of extra water because the water supply is changing very, very quickly. Unless you've got one heck of a filtration system, you do not want to be drinking loads and loads and loads of water. You can get a lot of water through your fruits and vegetables, which I like that kind of water because, again, the best filtration system on earth is the process of mineralization through the soil and into a plant. Okay? So yes, I've definitely heard about what's going on in the water supply. Yes, sir. Okay. Question, this is a very good question. This is very on point. The question was about preparation. How do we recommend that these foods be cooked to make sure that the nutrients are maintained? When it comes to proteins, I do not do a lot of grilling, because grilling, when you're charring stuff and there's stuff falling through and then being burned and shot back up, there's just a lot of carcinogenic levels in grilling, okay? So I do not recommend people grilling constantly. We used to do this, by the way. I mean, a couple years ago, we grilled everything. We just don't grill much anymore. One of the things that you're going to see on our resources page is you will see actual cooking pans. Because does anyone realize that Teflon became outlawed, and now the industry has 5 years to do a massive sell-off before it's gone? So when they find out it's dangerous, they still go ahead and let it be sold into the marketplace to non-assuming people who think it's wonderful to have a nonstick pan. When it comes to prep, you want to try to use a pan that does not have a coating on it. And we love baking or broiling. We even do sautéing. I mean, steaming is great too. One of the things you might want to try to do as far as rule of thumb to increase the enzyme content in your food is to try to eat half of your produce raw. And try not to cook more than half of your produce. And that'll kind of increase the nutrient content. This is why we got a Vitamix too. I mean, a lot of you know the Vitamix doubles as a boat motor. The thing actually has horsepower. But a Vitamix you can drop an apple into it and it makes applesauce. Yes, stem, core, everything. You will not know that there were any seeds or anything there. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about some of the tools we recommend, some of the investments you can make in your kitchen to really increase the nutritional value of your food and increase your prep time. It'll help a lot. But yeah, so it's kind of all of those things you can still use. We don't put stuff in frying oil. We just don't fry things very often. Just bake them, broil them, those kind of things. And we still do stocks and things like that, cooking for long periods of time to pull the enzymes and the minerals out of bones and things too. So, yes, sir. Iron skillets? There's an awful lot of stuff when it comes to a lot of information on various different cooking things where they're finding that a lot of the stuff that has touted its safety still leaches into the food. And a really good test for this, by the way, and I actually just had this test done on my stuff, was to put some baking soda and water in your pan and turn it up to medium-high on the stovetop, and then take just a little drop and put it on your tongue. And you will taste immense amounts of heavy metal levels on your pans, coming out of your pans, just in baking soda and water. So when you think of that, you're cooking in these pans every day and they're shooting stuff into your food. the pans become a big issue. But stainless steel to titanium is where things are going. And again, you'll see us recommend a certain type of titanium pan simply because it does not leach. It's what they use in joint replacements because it won't leach into the human body. So that's what we recommend. But okay, this has been a good Q&A. It's been very, very useful. Okay, we will see you back here for Lesson 5. And for those of you who still have questions that did not get them answered, please email them to us. All right? Have a wonderful trip home. It's been a blessing. Thank you.